Hi all, thank you for joining the Candidate Development Subcommittee today. Connecting with transferable skills is what we are speaking on today, and we are so excited to have you here with us. Thank you for joining us. So for starters, once again, we have our Candidate Development Committee team for TPE this year. My name is Julie Bat, she, her, hers pronouns. I'm currently in my second MBA. My first is a Master's of Education in Higher Education Administration, and now I'm getting my MBA in Strategic Leadership from Winthrop University.
And I'm Andre Jordan Jr. I'm currently serving as the Assistant Director in the Office of Student Rights Responsibilities at UNC Greensboro, and I use he, him, his pronouns. Nice to see you all again.
And I'm Steph Olson, she, her, hers, Career Services Coordinator at UNC Chapel Hill.
So to give you an overview of what this presentation is, in many ways it builds off of our first presentation about building your brand. And we're really going to hopefully get started talking about some of the skills you have that are transferable. So we'll kick it off with a quick introduction about what are transferable skills, what types of things maybe make a skill transferable. We'll then go into why they're important. We believe that these are vital to people who are trying to transition into higher education student affairs between different functional areas. So we really want to help you highlight that importance of that. Again, how to identify, and then we'll even talk through some success stories just of how this has worked out for some people a little bit later in the presentation. So, yeah.
All right, so the first thing is, what are transferable skills? Well, you can, of course, Google this. There's many different technical answers to this, but we're going to kind of give you the version of how we see this fitting into your professional work in higher education and however you're coming to us. So these are skills, and skills are used in a broad term. There's so many different skills. We're going to talk about what those can be, but they can be used in different pathways, different places, different work environment. A easier way to think of this is when you hear people talk about soft skills. Some people prefer the term power skills, but these skills that we're often just innately, we are expected to have, but sometimes we, in a transferable skill setting, need to describe those in the behaviors or the terminology that best fits to what you're applying for. So we're going to give some examples today about how you might be able to change terminology or really synthesize down that skill. So a general one could be a communication skill. There's a lot of different ways that that can happen. So thinking at this high level of power skills, soft skills, and oftentimes these are things you use outside the workforce in your daily life, when you're organizing your life, when you're interacting with people, building relationships. These are things not necessarily even specifically associated to work. And thinking about it from these three lenses can sometimes help you take a step back as you're looking at what you bring to the table in the realm of transferable skills.
All right, so why are transferable skills useful? They can expand your brand, right? Sometimes it's hard to find a job. Sometimes you're very streamlined and you have repetition and you're just like, I want to do more. I want to use my undergraduate degree if it wasn't something that you're not currently using. Expanding your brand can be an area of connection, right? You know, not everyone sits around and talks about work all day. So how can you use those experiences externally you've had, or maybe the small part-time jobs in high school, whatever they might be, to create a broader connection? And then finally can be an area of connection to transition, right? So everyone experiences burnout, everyone experiences times where they think it might be nice to do something else. How can you use the things on your resume or just the experiences you've had, your other interests, in order to get yourself back, to expand, to have more opportunity?
All right, so now we're going to talk about just a few examples of how these can show up. This is obviously not an exhaustive list. The list is endless of the types of things that you could mention on a resume or an interview about transferring skills that you've gathered in one place and how that could be useful to another space. But the first one that we thought of is communication. That is something that is highly talked about within the professional space, but I think that there is something really special about being able to be an effective and efficient communicator, whether that's through conversations with the colleagues that you have, the people that you supervise or that supervise you, but even the ways in which you communicate with your students, right? Some of those, like Steph said, just like soft skills that people sometimes innately have that they're just able to do. Being able to articulate that in an interview could really help an employer see, oh yes, this person would be a good candidate or a good fit for this role, even if they don't have all of the direct experiences or whatever that we're looking for in this role. We think that this person, has this one special thing that we could, utilize to prepare them to be successful in this space. Another example we thought of is project management. A lot of times, right, we in student affairs roles are given either like projects to work on or special tasks in our work, or even some of the things that you do. You don't often realize that like that is actually a task around project management. You're seeing a project from inception to completion. You're seeing it through, you're overseeing, certain aspects of it. And that can be very, very useful in a lot of functional areas, a lot of industries. And even like if you were, on the executive board for that organization in undergrad or grad school, or if you did this, special research project or something like that, don't abandon those experiences on the resume because it doesn't appear in a job posting it directly, right? But those are phenomenal skills that you can relate in an interview space. Organization, time management, those are really important skills to have, very important to think through, specifically as it relates to communicating that to employers. Maybe you don't have experience with that one specific case management software that they're using at that institution, but you can speak to your ability to manage your time well, keep things organized, stay on top of those tasks. That's really important. And then, we're becoming more and more tech dependent, tech reliant in our work. So if you can ever speak to, your proficiencies or understandings of technological systems and softwares and that type of thing, that'll get you far. That'll help you out a lot. So just a few examples. There's obviously a lot more. We're happy to continue that conversation offline.
So this is just one place of some deeper dive of what these kind of skills are. So any of you that have gone through a career center in your undergrad, or if you work in career services, or if you're interested, this is from the National Association of Colleges and Employers. So we thought this is a good place to just think about where are we seeing this in the employer needs. So these are synthesized from this association working with employers on all levels across the country in multiple disciplines, surveying and asking what are these general skills you're looking for in particular in new hires. So if you're thinking about it, it can, even if you're not a new hire, these things are just a good baseline to start with and then go dig a little bit deeper. Obviously, there's others in organizations such as NASPA, ACUHO-I, leading principals will oftentimes give you cues if you're trying to think to yourself, what are different examples of skills that I might have? Look to organizations that you're involved in and what they're leaning on. Those are going to give you some cues, and then you can take those as a baseline to take it a little bit deeper.
All right, so identifying your own skills, doing a constant self-analysis, right? So you don't know how others perceive you until you ask. And what I like to do and what I like to say is not just supervisors, not just peers, ask students, constantly ask something that one of my mentors in undergrad said at the end of every one-on-one with a supervisee is ask what you're doing well and what you can improve upon. And I think this can kind of those transferable skills of maybe you're not in the right fit. Maybe there's something people see in you that you're not using in your current role. How do you then get those cues from other people and you're like, wow, I have this skill. How can I amplify it up in my job searches, in my skill set, and what I'm volunteering for? Review your resume. Your resume, are you using the action verbs you are using? A lot of times in higher ed, there's like residence hall director, they call it something else at the institution, or even when you're doing a lot of interviews, like on a TPE day, I've made the mistake of, not having the right terminology for the right institution or thinking about the processes. Make sure you're really spending time and not just applying to jobs to apply to jobs, but narrowing it down so that you remember those words, that you're changing it up, and that you're personalizing it if you really want a position. Review your roles. If you had to write a job description of your life and or your current role, what are the things you're looking for? What are you aligning with what you want to do outside of work, where you're at with your family, where you want your family to grow? Are there opportunities for things you like culturally, things you like to do for fun? Review your role. And finally, reflect on achievements. What are your achievements and what skills do you use to achieve them? Are you including the numbers? Are you including the start to finish, how you delegated? Are you thinking about what made that an achievement or what you just did to say, I do this? Are you explaining it? Are you conveying the transferable skills? Creating this is what I'm capable of moment, because that's what's going to further you along in candidate searches.
All right, so now we just want to talk a little bit about how this could come into play when you're reviewing a job description. So this job posting that we have a screenshot here is one that's currently active on our TPE website. So if you're looking through this and seem interested, give the TPE website a view. But it's really important when you're looking through job descriptions that you really pinpoint the ways that you would highlight in a cover letter, on a resume, in an interview, what these transferable skills might look like for you coming in, right? So if you're looking through the required or preferred qualifications of a role, or even the tasks associated with the role, and you're like, oh, maybe I don't have these things directly, it's important that you start thinking through, how can I synthesize the things I have done to make sense in context within this role, right? So maybe I don't have, a ton of experience directly with orientation programs specifically, but maybe I've done things with first year, teaching a first year seminar, or I've done things as far as creating programs, supervising student leaders. Those are the types of things that you can think through to say, okay, I can connect to this role in this way. It's also helpful if you want to maybe chat with hiring managers, mentors, people for clarification if anything seems confusing, or if you want to say like, hey, I'm thinking of applying to this role, thinking about highlighting these transferable skills. Do you think that that makes sense if I mention that in an interview? Like Julie mentioned, it's really helpful to ask the people that are in your corner for advice and support with this. Sometimes it's good to see this stuff in action and in writing, right? I'm a person who is always looking at job descriptions and trying to figure out, here's the parts of my job that I love and enjoy. What's next on the docket for me? So it's really helpful to just look through and, get that practice with seeing it in writing. A reviewing job description for common words, right? A lot of institutions have very similar language in their job descriptions. And so if you can infuse that into your materials that you submit, that might allow them to connect with you a little more and see you in the roles that you're applying for. Again, think about high level skills rather than specific tasks, right? So if you're getting bogged down in the job posting of like, they want someone that's done this and that's done this and then that's done that, and I don't have it, we would encourage you to free yourself from feeling weighed down by that. And if you have these high level skills, communication, leadership, that you think could show them that even if I don't have it, I have the capability of learning it, that might help you get, a few places in the process. Identifying behaviors and accomplishments that are under these categories, and then noticing if there isn't a lot of content in the description. That would be a time, again, maybe going back up to that first bullet point, to reach out to someone that works in the institution, someone that maybe has connected to this role or this office before, to see if you can get any more information, just so that you know what types of things you can bring into a space. So we encourage you, get started looking at some job postings and thinking through some of the ways that what we're talking about can be applied during the application process.
So getting just a little bit more specific to this. So we've talked all about general transferable skills. What are they? Like, how can you find them? So hopefully you've got maybe 5 or 6 in your head, or you're starting to think about where your transferable skills lie. It's important to acknowledge that probably most of you listening to this presentation are at different places in your career, and those transferable skills might show up a little bit different. So we thought, let's just give some examples of what we've seen in these different areas and how some of these skills might transfer. So one example could be you're switching functional areas. You want to stay within higher education. Maybe you're moving from housing to advising, or maybe you're moving from advising to student conduct, or student conduct to student affairs. So many different options. But thinking about how can I leverage the knowledge that I have, even if I don't have direct knowledge in a functional area. Well, thinking about student development and student interaction is very much this baseline. So one example is student development equals student advising. You know about development, you have the keys to understand advising and working with students if that's what this functional area is. One other piece to consider, even if you're switching institutions, if you work in higher ed, we all know higher ed functions a little differently sometimes than other types of organizations. So you have this idea of higher ed knowledge or institutional knowledge. So that equals policy and process or procedure knowledge, which some applicants might not have. So thinking about leveraging that if you're switching functional areas, there's a lot more. These are just some examples to get you started. Then think about you're coming into higher education. Maybe you're coming from working at an organization as a program manager. Maybe you're working in K through 12 education. You're looking to level up. You'd like to be working with college students, whatever the case may be, coming into higher ed. Client meetings, if you worked with clients or students and students, they're the same as student meetings. Clients have needs, have output. There is a need of customer service that's very similar to our service with students in higher education. Also thinking about program management, event management, we often see in higher education, there's a lot of event programs happening. So it's a big transferable skill. Organization, just like Andre talked about in the earlier slide with some of those specific skills. Then thinking about maybe you want to transition up. You don't have some of those experiences, but how can you leverage some of those skills? So one example is if you can delegate things, that is a part of leadership, the ability to delegate and know how to use the resources around you. If you have supervised students, that can translate into staff supervision. So thinking about those terms loosely and thinking about where that can come into play is important while you're identifying these. And it's not on here, but as we transition to this next slide, also thinking about maybe you're thinking about pivoting into an organization that supports higher ed. So this last example to Dean of Students, NASPA Strategic Operations, thinking about that also being similar to leverage what you have working in higher ed to then working for an organization that supports people who work in higher ed. So we're going to pivot and just talk about some success stories. Now, I'll be honest, some of these are real life and some of these are a little more theoretical of where there could be success. I'll get us started and then I'll let Julie and Andre add in. But the one in the middle, I can say I've had experience working where I have been on teams and have hired someone who was in high school, worked as a high school educator, and transitioned into a student affairs role. And this person really leveraged a lot of the work that they did to connect with students for student success to be in this role. And the hiring team was really impressed by the connection that that person made of, yes, that college students are at different levels, but still need pieces of connection, still have development. And they were able to very clearly leverage those skills in addition to their organization. The position had a lot of event coordination and they leveraged a lot of that in the skills. So that's an idea of a person who was successfully able to use translatable skills to be in a different role that they were looking for. So I'm going to open this up to Julie and Andre if they want to kind of share some things that they've seen within their experience across higher ed.
I think when I look at myself right now, I'm in school again, so I'm thinking about it from a different context. But I think the two main things I would say I've seen people be successful in especially in transitioning, is networking from a young age and doing it on a variety of areas, not just in one area of higher ed or whatever, your degree is in, but really going outside. I know a lot of people I've seen utilize Greek life, fraternity, sorority, honor societies, utilize LinkedIn, utilize connections, family, friends, thinking about how the spaces you're in and every minute, right? Even like going to family reunion. How are you showing up and how are you transcending your work? Because I think for me, a lot of the people I've seen be most successful have been able to go to different conferences, be able to bring different sides of their identity into their work and stay stagnant in that from a young age and then develop it even if they were first generation. I think that also thinking about your finances while you're doing that, right? Something that for us, we're doing in my family is we're going to pay off our mortgage in the next 3 years. We have a jar with money and we continuously evaluate that. That's something that when I'm filling out my FAFSA, I'm doing it ahead of time. I was always told you pay yourself a certain amount per month if you ever need this transitionary period or you're without a job, whatever it might be. You're reflecting back on it and you're utilizing your resources and you're engaging, whether as a graduate student or a job seeker, with those people who can help you and coach you in those skills while you're job searching or thinking of transitioning.
Yeah, I can think of like two kind of examples of success stories of people using skills developed in one space or a previous life, so to speak, and use that to impact kind of a transition within their, career and student affairs. I know I have one colleague that when I was working in residence life, is currently exploring roles within the Greek life sector. They were in a fraternity in undergrad, and that was like kind of built up as a big part of their passion and their they did a lot of research in graduate school around how that's a population of people that get a lot of attention, but they're not always like supported in the ways that are necessary. And so even while working in residence life, he would always, just highlight those communities and how important the work is. And now he's like looking into finding ways to maybe work for those like a Greek organization directly, maybe in like uh, some type of administrative role within the fraternity or, Greek life at an institution. And so like using, one, just personal passion and interest in something, pairing that with skills developed in residence life, which I think is a very transformative experience for people who do res life. And then channeling all of that in a more focused support area within that. And then I also think about someone that I work with currently in the field of student conduct, has a background in counseling and like psychological services, and we'll be in conversation about a case and we'll just have two very, very drastically different approaches and points of view in that case. And I think that really shows beautifully, one, how a lot of the times the things that you've gotten in your past can maybe inform the way that you approach the work in a new role. But you can also introduce those concepts to your new student affairs office. That really helps to enhance us all for the better, right? So learning from her about things that may be harmful or may not be, best practice if I'm trying to be trauma informed, that I wouldn't ever consider if I didn't meet her, has been really helpful, not only to her practice and to our students, but also to my own practice as an employee. So I think there's quite a few examples of people just that having, experiences in other spaces, bringing it into a different space. And once rooted there, really thriving because of the special skills that they bring. So, yeah.
All right, so wrapping up, ask about skills at the career fair or in an informational interview. Make sure you're talking to people, right? Especially people who don't know you. when you're trying to find a job, people who don't know you are going to notice things that you might not. Ask them, write out your top 5 skills. As you experience more, as you do more interviews, as you get more feedback, whatever it might be, as you go out and live more life, and hopefully you're socializing with someone, engaging with someone. What are 5 things that people are saying about you, complimenting or saying, oh, you're too much in this area? How can you hone that in and bring that out and then develop yourself further in your job searching? Journal about accomplishments around those skills, right? So continuously do a self-review, a self-analysis, writing back, being able to fine tune and transcend what you want for your future. And thank you once again for joining us today.
So, as mentioned in the first video, we do have quite a few events coming up in this TPE season. The career fair is happening, a virtual career fair on February 7th, starting at about noon. Be on the lookout in your email for more information. We are doing another session following this series on networking and recruiting. So we've really talked about building the brand. We talked about these transferable skills. Now let's start talking about how do you share this in conferences and interviews and other spaces, and what types of things are going to be important in the recruiting process regarding this. Following that, so that'll come out on the 13th, the following week. On the 20th, we'll be releasing our final installment of this sessions, talking about negotiations, getting the bag. That's really, really important, especially in this season, in this climate that we're in. Any ways that you can negotiate in your roles that you're looking for will be helpful. So we're hoping to give you a few nuggets of information regarding that. And then always want to plug our TPE virtual placement event happening on March 4th. Be on the lookout for more information regarding that.
And then we're just going to wrap up really quick to talk about some things going on our social media. So we've talked a lot about just from our experiences, transferable skills, but we're going to be reaching out on social media, Instagram specifically, and talking a little bit about what are people looking for in transferable skills? What are some of the top things employers are looking for? And so you're probably going to be seeing posts, seeing thoughts from real life employers, what's going on right now. So we highly recommend that you just kind of follow along with social media, keep a tab of what's going on. You might get some of those insights. And then please, we'll be at some of these events coming up, like the fair next week or this week by the time this releases, and then also placement. So you'll see us, you'll see other members on the planning committee at the help desk. And if you have questions around transferable skills hiring, please don't be a stranger and come ask us. That's what we're here for. We want to help you. We want to empower you to feel the best in your interviews. And so we wish you all the best. Until next time, we hope you have a wonderful day.